Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome back to Live from NCCE. I'm your host, Tammy Dunbar. Glad to be back here for this brand new school year and thrilled to be kicking it off with the amazing, incredible superintendent of the year, the amazing Joe Sanfilippo. You are going to be amazed if you have not caught him or his 1 minute walks to work on the Twitterverse. You've got to watch him. He is amazing. Joe, thank you for joining us. I am a huge fan of your hacking leadership. We're going to put a link in there for that, but y'all have to read this. And I heard there's a new book coming out, but my biggest question is, does it really take you 1 minute to walk to work?
A minute, about a minute and 10. If I walk slow on those walks, but I can get there. I can get from door to door in about 65, 68 seconds. Yeah, for sure.
Well, take it away, sir. We can't wait.
Well, thank you so much, Tammy. I appreciate the time. Everybody at NCE has been so incredible to work with, and I've had such a wonderful experience in terms of some of the stuff that we've been doing. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity just to come and talk. And I hope we can make this, just more of a, I can do some slides and stuff. And then at the same time, I really want to ask, I hope that you'll ask some questions that I can get to and answer the best that I can, and hopefully put ourselves in a position that we can kind of talk about the great things that are happening in schools. And, we talk about this whole idea of looking up and this whole idea of chasing smiles. And what that really means is, what are we doing to make sure that we put ourselves in the right mindset to see the great things that are happening all the time? Because a lot of times what ends up happening with us as educators is we go and we go and we go and we do and we do and we do. And the next thing you know, you're like, oh my gosh, how did I even get here? I mean, how many times have you blinked and said, my gosh, I can't believe it's May, or now maybe not this year, but you know what I mean? Right? I mean, you know what I mean? But we've got to put ourselves in a position where we can see the great things as opposed to getting to the next. I don't know how many of you are list people. There are list people out there that write stuff down on a list and check it off as they go along. You got some list people? Good. So there are two types of list people in the world, right? There are list people that write stuff down on a list and check it off as they go along, right? And then there are list people like me that write stuff down on a list and check it off as they go along. But if I do something that's not on the list, I'm going to write it on the list and I'm going to check it off, people. I am, because I should get credit for that. I did it. I should get credit for it, man. Telling you. But when I'm always in list mentality and list mode, I'm going and I'm going and I'm going, and I'm never taking a step back to realize the impact of the things that I'm doing, because I'm just going to the next thing. And we do that a lot. We tend not to look up and see the great things that are happening because we're always getting to the next thing that's going on. So that's kind of what we want to talk about today in terms of what this work is and how we can think about things just a little bit differently. And I want to really talk about it from this lens. What are we doing to look up and see the incredible things? At the same time, that comes back to something that I talk about a lot, which is how are we really taking care of all of the interactions that we have? Because when it comes down to it, every interaction matters, because every interaction could be the one that they talk about for the rest of their lives. And if we're always looking up and seeing the great things that are happening, those interactions are going to be more meaningful to the people around us. I mean, it was this whole conversation started because we've had a really tough couple of weeks. There's been some things that have happened that aren't awesome, right? And I know that my mind tends to veer when I'm in those spaces. And I was on the playground the other day, and as I'm walking down around on the playground, this little kid, this one of our elementary kids, just yelled at me. He's like, "Sanfilippo, look up, watch me." He just started running. And then he was in the field, he's running, he gets on the ground, does a little somersault, and then he runs again. He just wanted me to watch him run. And in that moment, I felt like all the other garbage that I was dealing with just went away. I mean, it came back, but for that second, it was gone. That was yesterday. It was yesterday. Yesterday, I was in the first grade hallway, and I'm walking down the first grade hallway, and I walked past the first grade room, and this little first grader pops his head out and says, "Hey, Joe, I can read now." Come on, Joe, that's what we're going with, right? I'm kidding. But he just wanted to tell me that he can read. Well, come on. That's why we do the work. But if we're always list, go, do, we don't take a step back and realize the impact in terms of what goes on around us. So what are we really doing to put ourselves in the right mindset to do those incredible things in terms of the work that we do? And we come back to these pieces. We always come back to these three things. How do we recognize the great work that we're doing? How do we acknowledge that great work? And then how do we extend the conversation to somebody who wasn't there? And that really that was really big in terms of what are we doing to put ourselves in the right mindset to do so. So when it it comes to recognition in terms of what this work really looks like, we always think about it this way. Like, what are we really thinking about the idea in terms of how we set up ourselves for success? So what I want you to do now is I want you to write down the first 5 things that you do when you get to school every day. Actually, you know what? We don't have time. We can ask this question later, but I want you to think about the first 5 things that you do when you get to work every day, and how many of those things bring you joy, and then where are they on your list? Because if the things that bring you joy are lower on your list or not on your list, you never put yourself in the right mindset to see the great things that are happening. This was my list when I got to school. Turn my computer on, get some salsa water, open email, respond to email, sign forms, walk hallways, get in the classrooms, connect with people. The things in blue are the things that I like to do. So by the time that I got to the things that I like to do, I was already in the wrong mindset to do those things, because I don't know if it's like this there. But there aren't a ton of people emailing the superintendent of schools in Fall Creek, Wisconsin with great things to say about school at 6 o'clock in the morning. Right? They're not like, nope, I'm not getting that email. There's always something to do, right? So we got to think about how can we put ourselves in the right mindset to see the great things by making sure that we put ourselves in a position to see the great things. And for me, it was getting to school a little bit earlier so I could know and understand what was happening, and I give myself a little time to really kind of, get myself back to neutral in terms of what it looks like. I want you to think about the first 5 things that you do to get to school when you get to school every day, and how that makes you present and engaged for the people that you serve at school. But I also want you to think about it when you go home. What are the first 5 things that you do when you get home? Right? Because what ends up happening with us a lot is we go home to the people that care about us the most, that give us the most latitude, and then they get the least of us because they give us the most latitude. The people who love you the most and give you the most latitude shouldn't get the least of you because they give you the most latitude and they love you the most. So what are we doing to start our day and end our day with joy, which is really essentially what are we doing to put ourselves in the right mindset to see great things? And it's not just about the joy, it's about starting your day and ending your day, like making sure that you're always cycling. You're not always cycling, that you give yourself a hard start and a hard end, because at the same time, if you're not doing that, you just keep going and going and going, and you never know when the day starts and the day ends. So what do we do to put ourselves in the right mindset to do all of those things? So this is the way that we think about it. We've recognized what that work really looks like because we've put ourselves in the right mindset to do that. The second thing is, how do we acknowledge what that work really looks like? So if the example that I give is, you're walking down a hallway and you see a second grade teacher and she's doing something incredible with a second grade student, and you go into that teacher's room and you tell them this is what you saw and this is the connection that you saw, and you saw the look in the kids' eyes and they looked up at you like you were a god, and it was awesome and I loved it. Like, that's great for the 2 people in that space, right? And you want to make sure that you put yourself in a position to make sure that you can see the great things. And that's the one part. That's the first part, is acknowledging to that person that they're doing great work. We'll get to the extension in a second, but that's the first part, is acknowledging what that work really looks like. So we do things to make sure that we acknowledge the work by, like, putting pictures of kids in our boardroom. And before every board meeting, I stand up and say, let's never forget why we make decisions in the school district. We start our meetings with kids all the time because we want to make sure that they know and understand why they make decisions in that school district. This is Caden. Caden came up to me as a 3rd grader and he said, Dr. Sanfilippo, I just got back from the visually impaired Olympics in Denver and I won these ribbons. You think I'd come to the school board, talk about my ribbons? Yes, you can, kid. Yes, you can. Anytime, buddy. Anytime. Comes, does the whole thing. School board loves him. And then this 9-year-old kid, right before he takes off, he says, I want to say one more thing. I want to say thank you to Mrs. Moore. She's my paraprofessional here. She helps me get around school. She just makes it a lot easier for me. So what do you think happens to Mrs. Moore in the spring when we start talking about the budget? Right? She's not a number anymore. She's a story. And the story wins every single time. The story will always win. That's where the acknowledgement comes. And the last thing is, how do we extend that? So if you're talking to the second grade teacher and you see the second grade teacher doing the great things and you acknowledge that to them, what if you walk down to the 8th grade room and you tell the 8th grade teacher about the great things that are happening in second grade? What inevitably happens is the 8th grade teacher is going to walk to the second grade classroom to tell the second grade teacher that he heard great things about the work that she was doing, because at some point somebody did it for him and it felt good. And you just want to be a part of a place that you can feel good. That's what we want. These are the opportunities to extend what this really looks like. A couple of years ago, my wife and I were celebrating our 20th year anniversary, 20 years of wedded bliss. And in 20 years of wedded bliss, I have never taken this woman on vacation alone. We've always had kids with us all the time. So let's be clear about one thing, people. Like, I'm a catch. Let's be really clear about that. All right. So we were going to go to Hawaii for our 20th year anniversary, and we go to Hawaii, and she said that she wanted to see the USS Missouri because her grandpa served on the USS Missouri, and when she was a kid, she used to sit on his lap and hear stories about the USS Missouri. So of course we're going to the USS Missouri, and we're sitting in the artillery area where he was stationed. We're talking to the tour guide, and the tour guide said, if you go into the lower level of the ship, there's a list of all the names of the people who were on the ship during the time of the treaty signing. And we go down there, and this is the exact moment right here where my wife found her grandpa's name on that list of thousands of names. And if you can just see the pride and the joy in her eyes in that moment, and people, she just saw a name. Like, that's it. She just saw a name. But the minute she saw that name, she said, "Give me my phone." And I gave her a phone, and she FaceTimed her mom, and her mom got a chance to see her dad's name on a wall, a dad she hasn't spoken to in 15 years. And then it was the aunts and the uncles, and everybody wanted a piece of that moment, even though they weren't there for the moment. We were able to extend the event beyond the event, so it gets talked about well beyond the event. Those are the things that we can do in school districts all the time. It gives us a chance to really talk more about the feelings and the facts that happen. It's not just about the facts that happen in your school. It's about connecting the feelings to the facts. So how do we do that? How do we do that? What's a big deal in terms of how do we do that? We've taken a look at The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath, and we use this book and these concepts a lot to tell the great stories and to make sure that we're looking up and seeing the great things that are happening. So we've talked about the impact of these moments and what that really looks like, and how those moments really can turn into movements if we're willing to actually see them. So what Chip and Dan Heath say are there are these defining moments that happen that people will remember. They talk about the peak pit transition, meaningful work, autonomy, choice to participate, elevation, pride, and connection, and then the boost sensory, raise stakes, and break script. And I want to get into a couple of these just very, very quickly with some examples of how you can do them in your space. You think about the peak pit transition. What they say is that people remember two things about events: the emotional high, low, the peak pit, and they remember the transition. Now, we can't always control the peak or pit because we don't know what emotionally is going to connect to everybody all the time, but we can control the transition. So what are we doing to make sure that, like, in the first 5, last 5, in the first 5 minutes of class, that we make sure that kids feel loved, supported, and safe? And what are we doing in the last 5 minutes of class to make sure that they have the right story to tell when they go home? We do the same thing with meetings. What are we doing in the first 5 to make sure that the people in that meeting feel loved, supported, and safe? And what are we doing in the last 5 minutes to make sure that they have the right story when they get out of that space? That gives us a better chance to talk about the great work that's happening. The second thing is, how do we provide meaningful work, autonomy, and choice to participate? For us, it was creating these passion projects where people get a chance to really lean into what they're passionate about and learn what they're passionate about. And those passion projects have turned into purpose. And what we do with those, honestly, is instead of me getting like this review at the end of the year to tell people, to tell me like what they've learned throughout the course of the year, we do the street fair. So instead of that reflection that I get, that they could write down anything they want, our teachers put together an opportunity where they put their learning on display, and then their colleagues get a chance to take a look at what they've learned throughout the course of the year. And this is really great because you really get to lean into the learning and make connections with each other. And all of a sudden you get to start thinking about, like, oh my goodness, you do that? I didn't know that you did that. Let's do that together. That's something that we could do. And the final straw for us is, if you look at the bottom part of this, you can see that we live streamed it, and 21,000 people watched the live stream of our teachers teaching other teachers. So now people know that the work that they do goes beyond the 4 walls of their school, and it changes the conversation about what they do. The third thing that we talk about is, how do we elevate pride and connect the great work? And so for us, it's really about taking like the great stuff that's happening and putting it in a position where people can connect it to the work that we're doing. So we talk a lot about forced engagement. When we think about, what we're talking about and how we force the engagement of the work, we think about like the idea of how do we elevate and connect the great work that's happening. We talked about those 1-minute walk to work videos. If you watch those 1-minute walk to work videos, there are 6 Fall Creek drops in every single one of those 1-minute walk to work videos. Take a look at them from right here. You got this first part where I always walk past my car, and I always say Fall Creek, Wisconsin. That's 2. I walk past my door. There's another sign there. That's 3. I walk past my fence. There's another sign on my fence. That's 4. There's a door that I could walk in right about here, coming up there. But if I walk around the corner, there's another sign right there that's 5, and I always end the same way by saying, all right, go Crickets. All right, so it gives us a chance every week when we do those, or every other week or whatever. And if those things are seen by 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people, whatever, now they're seeing Fall Creek on display at all times. Develop some social capital in terms of the work that we do. The last thing that I want to talk about is how do we boost sensory, raise stakes, and break script when it comes to this work? Because if you think about it, people are going to remember things that boost their sensory, that raise the stakes of the work, but break the script. Think about how many things that you do throughout the course of the day that are just monotonous. Logging into a computer, all that kind of stuff that we think about differently. How can we break the script to make sure that it's a memorable event? Like when we had to have our people come into school, we used to have these wellness checks that people had to fill out the wellness check to tell us that they were COVID free, right? So we did that. And instead of having a form where you click submit and it just said, thank you for submitting your form, when you click submit after you certified that you're COVID free, we put in every day an interesting fact about one of our staff members, right? So now this gives us a story starter for the work that we're doing. It changes the conversation, gives people an opportunity to break the script. When we hire people and we do these press conferences, that breaks the script in terms of the work that we do, the backdrop, the microphone, all of that stuff, all of the pictures. You put it on Facebook, you put the teachers on Facebook. These are the things that happen and give us the opportunity. Instead of me calling and saying, hey, I want you to come and work in Fall Creek. What if you let the committee that wants them to hire or wants them to be hired, let them offer the job? Create a moment and a memory for the people that are in these spaces. This is Cassia. Cassia gets a job offer to teach 7th grade. She's excited about it. She says yes. Toby's over here on the right. As soon as she said yes, he texted me to tell me she said yes. What everybody doesn't know is I'm outside with all the kids that are going to be in her classroom right now next year. They don't know she said yes. They walk into the room and then they offer her the job. This is the moment that we can share. This is the moment. This is the opportunity. And we got to think about the idea that it doesn't matter, that everybody is somebody's kid, right? Like you take this video and you say to Cassia, I can delete this thing right now, or I can send this to your mom. You tell me what you want to do. Everybody's somebody's kid. Doesn't matter if they're 4, 14, 24, or 44. Everybody's somebody's kid, and everybody's kid deserves to be celebrated. I was doing a conference a couple years ago, and I put out a tweet saying, hey, I'm here. I can't wait to be here with the Skyward Group. And I got this thing from Bruce. He said, say hi to Stephanie for me. And I said, she's amazing. I can't wait. And he said, thanks for saying so. It makes a daddy proud. Stephanie's our secretary. Man, like these are the things that we can do. And fortunately, we lost Bruce a couple weeks ago, but this is the thing that I always come back to. Like he was so proud of the work that she did as a secretary in Fall Creek, Wisconsin. Man, that's big. And when people want to come in and, and create these moments, we got to think about the other piece of it too. Like we had a candidate come into our office a couple years ago named Claire, and she said that the reason she became a teacher was 2nd grade teacher, Mrs. Peach. And if Claire gets the job and you make enough calls, you can get a hold of Mrs. Peach, man. And then when she walks in to get this job, guess who's sitting there? It's Mrs. Peach. Right? And Mrs. Peach is the one that gets to offer the job, and it all comes full circle. It breaks the script and gives us a chance. These are the opportunities that we have in terms of what this work really looks like. So what can we do? Because there's so much time. How can we fill the pits and understand that these transitions are happening around us all the time when it comes to this work and thinking about the work that we do? So the more that we can do that, the better chance that we have to tell the great stories and create the memories, because those are the things that are going to be talked about. And if those aren't the things that are going to be talked about, then we lay victim to everybody else's narrative. And I'm talking about, who I'm talking about. It's these awfulizers. Do you know these people? These are the people that when the Powerball is like 450 million, they're like, yeah, but after taxes, it's really not that much money. Do you know that these people are everywhere? These are the people that are complaining about. These are the people that email their the travel agents with the most ridiculous comments about their trips. Like this guy was so jacked up because he was bitten by a mosquito and the brochure didn't say anything about mosquitoes. How about this guy down here? Nobody told him that there was going to be fish in the water and the kids were scared. Are you kidding me right now? Like these are the people we're dealing with. And my all-time favorite, this poor lady was very upset because they shouldn't allow topless sunbathing on the beach. It was very distracting for her husband. He just wanted to relax. Just let the guy relax. I mean, come on, right? Like these are the people that are telling stories, and that puts us in a tough position when it comes down to this work. So what are we really doing? What are we really doing to put ourselves in a spot where we can build each other up and put ourselves in a spot where we know and understand that the work that we're doing has benefit, has opportunity. I mean, everybody's waking up in the morning and trying to do the best work that they can. Like, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I can't wait to be average today, right? Like, average is not a place that you aspire to be. It's a place that you end up. It's like going to Denny's. Like, nobody goes to Denny's, man. Like, they just end up there. This is what happens with average when you don't feel like you're valued in this spot. So when we put ourselves in a position where we can recognize and acknowledge and extend, we look up automatically and see the great things that are happening in our space. Like when our kids are in third grade and they dress like you for Halloween, man. Like, you better make sure that on their last walk through that hallway that you return the favor. Happens around us all the time. These things happen and they create moments, and these moments turn into movements if we're willing to see them and understand that they happen, right? Like a couple years ago, I got a chance to go back to the place that I taught second grade. I was hired to teach second grade in Pulaski, Wisconsin. And when I was there, I thought, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to my old classroom, and I'm going to go take a look at my old classroom, and we're going to sit there, and I'm going to sit in my classroom and just kind of have this big rush of nostalgia, because I spent so much time and energy and money in that space. And I got there and I didn't feel anything in that moment. I felt kind of bad, right? And I was going over to where I was doing the keynote, and I'm walking through the hallway, and I see this man, this huge man, as I'm walking through, and he smiles at me. And I walk over and I take the selfie with him. And I thought to myself, man, I felt like I was in that same spot before. And I was, because 18 years before that day, he was a second grader in my class. And that was his first day teaching second grade in Pulaski, Wisconsin. And I got to be there for it. And he started talking to me about all the stuff we used to do. And outside of reading all the places you will go, I had no idea what he was talking about. But it didn't matter, because it mattered to him. These moments are around us all the time if we're willing to lean in and understand that they happen around us all the time. That our opportunity is there if we lean in to talk about the great things that are happening in that space. And I hope you can do that every day when you get to school. Put yourself in the right mindset. Recognize the great work. Acknowledge the great work. Extend the great work. And it puts ourselves in a position to see value with everything that we do all around us. That's our opportunity. Right? And now I'm just going to leave it up for questions. Any questions you got? I am trying to get the best light that I can. Sun is setting, people. Sun is setting in Kansas City, Missouri today. And so I just got to find myself, and my arms are going to get tired. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I did 4 push-ups in a row last week. Ripped. Totally ripped. Let's be serious about that. But holding this computer for a little bit, I may just drop it. I'm just going to tell you, I may just drop it. I'm going to do 5 push-ups next week in a row. Thank you. All right, what do you got? You got anything, Tammy?
I would love to see that. I can't do one push-up, not even a girl push-up. I can push away from the table, though, so I got that going. Someone was wondering how teachers can replicate those amazing experiences in the classroom with students and families. I can see some parallels, but do you have any recommendations? Because hacking leadership is wonderful, but it's kind of more for superintendents, principals, and leaders. So ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing that I would do is you take the same concepts of that whole recognize, acknowledge, extend model by making sure that you know and understand that everybody is somebody's kid. And when we make positive calls home, it's cool to say, hey, you know what? Your kid's awesome. Like, your kid's awesome. Your kid's fantastic. Your kid's awesome. That's great. But when you can tell them exactly what you saw and how you see them and what really resonated with you, it changes the conversation. But a lot of us stop at kids when it comes to that work, right? It's great. We can call kids and the parents of kids and that kind of thing. But what about colleagues, right? How often do you call the colleague, the spouse of a colleague, the kids of a if you like in our building, we had a ton of kids in our building that are kids of colleagues. So we try to make it a point of walking past those kids. And when I see some of those kids, I'll say, hey, your mom is fantastic. This is what I saw today. You're not going to believe what she did. It was so cool. And this is how it happened. And I just want to say that was awesome. And it was great for me to experience that. I was there. It was very, very cool. Right. And you know what's going to happen when they get home that night? They're going to find out about that. That gives us a chance. It just gives us a chance. That's what we want to do. So I would say that I think you can apply everything that we're talking about. We just got to figure out a way to make it like more student centric when it comes down to the story that's being told. I think, it doesn't, when it comes down to, extending the opportunity, that can happen with anybody. So I wouldn't worry about that too much, but these things can happen if you just, look up and see the great things there. And then don't keep like some of the best ideas in schools actually die before they exit the school walls, right? Like a fifth grade teacher has a great idea. They go to their colleague. They're like, I got this great idea, man. It's a great idea. And their colleague's like, don't do that. Because if you do that, then I'm going to have to do that. And I don't want to do that. Don't do that. Right. So they don't do it. And then it's afraid of that. It's a problem. So I think the idea that we have to keep in mind is they'll do it if they feel value in the work. So I think that's a big piece in terms of what we do.
I love it. We've got a question from Brian, who's from Washington. He's asking about a lot of people who are struggling right now. Is there anything you are doing differently to support teachers, students, and families? It's a crazy time.
Yeah, I think the first thing is listen and understand that people are going to get really angry about stuff, but don't like focus on the anger, focus on the message behind it, because it's really easy to get like, well, they're just mad. Well, yeah, but they're mad about something, right? And we're going through some stuff, right? At the same time, when it comes down to it, the stuff that we're going through, it's born out of like people wanting to do right by their kids. Like that's what it is. So you can't dismiss that, even though you don't agree with it. So I think that's the big. And the other thing is we're trying to be. We pulled back on a lot of PD stuff. Like we really pulled back on some of the meetings during full day PD. We just given teachers more time to just be. We have our we're just really trying to kind of be cognizant of their time. And there are days that we're not. And there are days that we try to, that we have to apologize and kind of move forward. But I think just being honest with them has been really helpful.
Wonderful. We're wondering, what kind of memory do you have? You can remember your students back from how many years ago? Do you keep a list of students, or do you just have that brain power? Maybe you should be a politician.
Yeah, no. No. So I don't know if I have I don't know. I guess they all touch your heart in some way, right? And you got to figure out ways that you can kind of keep those. And honestly, there are times that it really is important to just reflect on the good things that have happened, and all the good things that have happened when it comes down to the work in the last couple of years have been associated with kids in some capacity. So, and not just kids, but, seeing teachers work with kids and everything that goes along with it. So it's just really important to kind of come back to, why you do what you do. And I've just been extremely lucky to work with incredible people across the board. Our people in Fall Creek are just, man, like they're killing it. They're just they're so good at their job, and they're so good at connecting with kids. And with all the stuff that's been going on, and, you would think that, we used to live in this community, like with all the stuff going on, and all of a sudden, your school district lands on, CNN and Washington Post. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, all the social capital that we built is gone. And then you realize, like literally hours after it breaks, that maybe it hasn't, because people come out and say, we love what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. We love it.
Yeah.
And they were willing to say it. A lot of times people will be like, oh, yeah. I think that they do great work, but I don't really know. So I'm not going to say anything. But now that they know, gives us a great opportunity to kind of be in that space. So I think that's been a really big deal for us.
Love it. Tyler is asking, we can all blame COVID for pretty much everything these past 2 years.
Yeah.
As schools are pushing past, how would you get teachers out of the blame game and embrace the reality to push forward?
We keep coming back to recognize, acknowledge, extend, because none of that is blaming anything. So how many times have you gone to the person next to you and talked to the person next door and said, you know what, this is awful. Everything is awful. This is bad. This is bad. This is bad. Okay. We do that a lot. But how often do we go next door and say, you know what, you're really good at your job? Or, you know what, I just taught a crazy good lesson and I wanted to tell you about it. We don't do that. So we focus on making sure that there are opportunities to do that and just kind of be with people. And, it's not a lot of things in life that happen. It's not about the action. It's about the reaction. It's like how you respond. And so how we respond is what we're going to get, because when so here's the thing. Like, we get so jacked up at kids when they go home and they don't tell the right story of what happens. Do you ever notice that? Like, kid goes home, mom says, what'd you do at school today? And the kid says, nothing. I don't know. And then we get mad at the kid. Well, here's the thing. The reason the kid says nothing, I don't know, is because when they go home and they tell somebody what they did at home, or at school, it comes with a follow-up obligation of what they have to do at home. Like, if my son says to me, well, in civics, I did this, my follow-up question is, hey, you got any homework for that? So they're not going to tell you what they did at school, because it comes with a follow-up question of what they have to do at home, but they will most certainly tell you what they saw at school, because what they saw at school doesn't come with a follow-up question of what they have to do at home. And what they saw at school is how the adults interact with people, how the adults interact with the kids, how the adults interact with their colleagues, how the adults interact with parents, all of that. That's what they're going to talk about. So what can we do to put ourselves in the right mindset to see those great things and talk about those great things and help each other out with that? Because there's a bunch of garbage happening, man. And it may not go away for a while. So what are we going to do? Just sit back and like take it all? Or are we going to get on the positive side of it and just, I mean, and there's garbage and you have to acknowledge that, but it doesn't mean that you have to live in it.
I love it. We are so excited that you are here. So many people are wishing that you were their principal, you were their superintendent. We were very inspired. But as a teacher, I'm kind of excited because I heard there's a new book coming.
Yeah, new book coming out in January called Lead from Where You Are. And it's an opportunity just to talk about like how we can lead from whatever position that we're in at that point. So it really kind of, and if you've watched any of the 1 minute walk tour, I probably should have called it a Beyond the Walk or something, because the whole book is really a deeper dive into all of those 1 minute walk to work. So we'll see how it goes.
We love it. Thank you, Joe, so much for being here with us. We so appreciate having you here to kick off live from NCCE. Joe is on the Twitterverse at Joe_Sanfilippo. You can, of course, find him on his website, which we've had underneath there. He even gives out his phone number. So he is accessible. And maybe that's what your main message is, isn't it? It's all about relationships.
Always lean into them.
Thank you so much.
Remember. Yep, absolutely. No problem. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us live from NCCE. We'll be back next month, December 1st, Thursday. Be watching for the announcement for who's speaking at that one. But thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Joe.
Take care. Go Crickets.
Be safe, everyone.